metallic orchard, in which the one true subject of philosophy, or primum ens metallorum, first being of the metals, is laid bare and entirely revealed before the eyes, and described by a friend who is aware of the truth, and who gladly wishes to lead everyone away from the false path, and instead to guide and bring them to the one true fountain of the metals. Frankfurt and Leipzig. Written by Johan Friedrich Fleischer. 1741. Lord, show us the way in which we should walk. God, your word is the truth. Benevolent reader. Many years have already passed, during which I strove solely and alone to learn of the true fountain of wisdom, the Sal Sapientiae, salt of wisdom of nature, or, to speak rightly, to discover what the one true subjectum, or prima materia Lapidis Philosophorum first matter of the Philosopher's Stone, might be, or from what the stone should, could, or must be made. I have for many years sought after it in vain and useless things, and no one was more to blame for this than the great multitude of published writings, which the sophists had daubed together. One of them wishes to have an assert, with Theophrastus and all the true Adeptorum, adepts, that the Electrum minerale immaturum immature mineral Electrum must and could be made ex Antimonio from antimony, others, from boiled vitriol or its ore, others, from bismuth, arsenic, alum, niter, saltpeter, others, from blood, urine, the excrement of boys, others, from soot scraped from chimneys. Still others, who came somewhat nearer, though not yet upon the right mountain, think that one must extract sulfur, sulfur and salt from perfect or imperfect metals and recombine them. All such opinions and labors are false, and they indeed bring great harm, but not a penny of profit. Therefore, let everyone beware of such things. Had I but studied more diligently the giver, Theophrastus, Bernhardus, the waterstone of the wise, Basil's triumphal chariot, also his 12 keys together with the Dicta Alani, and the Philosophisches Vaterherz, philosophical fatherheart, and looked into them more deeply, then I would sooner have attained to finding and being able to make use of the seed of the metals. Yet the merciful God graciously heard my poor prayer, still at the right time, and allowed me to see and recognize the beginning of all metals, so that now I know thoroughly, as a notary, how all mineralia minerals grow, generate, and multiply from the prima materia first matter of the metals, just as all other created things do. For they too arise from the elements, just as the vegetabilia plants and animalia animals, the beginning of all things. It is a fiery, slimy water, from which nature must form and bring forth each thing, only with this difference, that nature, for each thing, applies more of certain elements, such as fire or water, than it does for other things. For the vegetabilia are of one kind, they do not have so much sulfur, sal fixum sulfur and fixed salt as the animalia do, rather, the element of water rules in them the most. Therefore, they grow and ripen sooner, but also perish sooner than the animalia. The animalia likewise have at their beginning sulfur, sal spiritum sulfur, salt, and spirit, yet the element of water is likewise the strongest element among them. However, mankind, both in this life and after death, has something particular above all other creatures, which shall later be recalled and touched upon. The mineralia minerals and metals are at the beginning likewise a slime, fiery water, and spirit. Nature must under the earth, through infusion of a new metallic sulfur, bring about a mingling which again grows, so that it shall become either a metal or a mineral. This then continues to grow, and in the course of long time becomes ripe, fixed, and malleable, so that it may be melted, hammered, and coined. But as soon as it has obtained such a metallic form, no artist is permitted to dissolve it and reduce it again into its principia principles. No, God and nature alone are capax capable of resolving it thoroughly once more and bringing it back into its first form, which was an element. Thus it has pleased the highest God, as long as the world stands, each thing has been brought forth according to its prescribed order. And all created things, whether above or under the earth, shall remain in this order until the end of the world. Therefore, let him be defied who would presume to overthrow God's order. Let each one consider how the vegetabilia plants, such as trees, leaves, grass, roots, and flowers, each multiply according to their kind, and it is not permitted for any man to make a frog from an apple, or from an ass a cuckoo. Who has heard that an animal has made a man, or a man has begotten an ox or an ass? Does not each thing keep its prescribed order, and does not each multiply through its own seed? Since then each has its proper place, seed, and station, and is increased and formed in its own kind, who then can doubt that God has also given to the mineralia and metals their own seed, place, station, order, and his blessing? Should anyone object and say that the metals have no seed, and do not continue to grow, but that God made them once at the beginning, at the creation of the world, and let them remain so? To this serves as answer, everything that abstatet stands apart, persists must grow, the metals die off, as experienced miners know and feel daily. Ergo therefore, the mineralia minerals and metalla must grow. God has imparted his blessing to every created thing, that each should be fruitful and increase, yet according to its kind. Should this blessing then have been given only to the vegetabilia ac animalia plants and animals? Such a thing is not to be believed. Whoever wishes to go down into the shafts, places, and galleries where ores are mined, and wait some time, will find that God and nature, when such ores have stood long enough on their stem, let them go again into mixture. For there he will find large pieces of exhaled or weathered ore, called gispeler or drusen geodes, drusas. From these, the spirit of life has departed as a stinking mist, smoke, vapor, and steam, drawn away to another place, leaving its sulfur behind in the drusas. Whoever cannot or will not believe this may himself ride down into the ore mines, and will perceive that everything is thus the case. The poisonous vapor, however, or the evil wetter mine air, when it leaves its body, attaches itself either to the sides of the adit, shafts, or galleries as a fatty matter, also settles upon the groundwater, and also rises up to the surface, where it is drawn out by the air and applied to other things. All created things have now received blessing, life, and growth from God, and, as already said, everything that grows also dies and is born anew, formed again by nature into something new. Man, however, has received from God a far greater blessing, which nature cannot give or impart to him. For he has received this blessing first of all, namely, that he was made in the image of God, endowed with a rational soul and spirit, and also received will. Whoever considers all this within himself can do nothing else but praise, thank, and glorify God. For as soon as man thinks, the five senses are already willing to accomplish what he thinks. The eyes see, the hands and feet reach and go thither, and so fulfill the will, the hearing attends. Is this not a remarkable great grace and blessing from God? All this nature cannot give to mankind. For the good of man and for his service, sun, moon, and all stars were created, to illuminate all things and to pour new power into them through their influence. All animals, birds, and fish, as well as everything that is under the earth, were created for the improvement of man, that he might use and benefit from them. Man therefore has great cause to thank God for this. Yet the arrogance of some men wishes to overstep God's command and order. Abominable is the great crowd of our present-day laborants. These presume to alter God's command, which says, "Be fruitful and multiply, each after its kind." Nevertheless, they still wish to make a metal out of blood, urine, vitriol, and whatever else. As long as the world has stood, no man has yet accomplished this, and as long as the world will stand, no man shall be able to do so, but rather he must let it rest with, "Let each multiply after its kind." Now, whoever wishes to make unripe metals fixed and ripe must apply thereto the principia principles of the metal from which it was made. To dissolve fixed metalla, and to extract their principia, is not possible without the argentum vivum living silver, quicksilver of the metals. Rather, let him be content with those beginnings which nature herself has prepared for him and for that reason has reduced back to their first state. Separate in each case the purum of impure pure from impure, and bring them properly together again, but let the artist beware, through great fire, that he does not burn up or drive away the life. Therefore he must carefully observe that his philosophical child suffer neither hunger nor thirst, nor by too much moistening and flooding be drowned or suffocated. Then at last, and in so far as God grants it to him, he will happily attain the final goal. Above all, the philosopher must know what the true philosophical sulfur is, whether it be the Electrum minerale immaturum immature mineral Electrum, or the sal naturae salt of nature, or the argentum vivum metallorum living silver of the metals. By this is by no means understood the running mercurius mercury, nor the Tyrolean red sulfur, no, rather the sulfur and the salt which have sprung from the metals and which have here been reduced by nature herself and brought back into their beginnings. These have been permitted to be taken, preserved, and collected. Let him who will hear, hear, but let him who will not heed, feel. I remember that formerly some in Holland, through public newspapers, requested that whoever knew what the true prima materia philosophorum first matter of the philosophers is, and what it actually might be, would please reveal it to them. My friend, whoever you are, here in this little treatise you will find it clear and plain. Theophrastus, Flamellus, Basil's Wasserstein der Weisen Waterstone of the Wise, and the philosophisches Vaterhers philosophical Fatherheart will attest to it. But if it should not yet be painted clearly enough for one or another, then perhaps further service could be done upon request. It serves each one to know, however, that whoever would write to the publisher in this matter should at once enclose the postage there and back. Besides that, he should note his name, rank, and age without falsehood. Then, and after I shall deem it good, I will faithfully and in a Christian spirit bring forth the truth and stand in service. God's grace and blessing be with us all. Amen. Whoever wishes to accomplish something good in metallurgy, these are Theophrastus's own words, must first of all know that the metalla metals and mineralia minerals are found nowhere else than in the earth, mountains, stones, and clefts, where the mineral waters dwell together with their mingling, and have their workshop, and that they grow there further, or else remain lying still. There, together with the materia philosophorum matter of the philosophers, the root comes forth. This matter and power is to be found in water and in fire. Now, this is the true matter, a water, which is nothing else, and yet is an element and water. It is all one thing, which some water cannot be without the earth, for it is from the earth. The earth is food, nourisher, and sustainer of such matter. It is spiritual, yes, a spiritual life, heavenly, earthly, magnetic. It is refreshed by the pure dew of heaven, the earth shelters it and is its mother. For from the beginning there was a spirit, an air, a fire, a water. Take this up, and enclose everything in one. Every metal needs this heavenly, material, working power, this spiritus spirit and sal salt, the spirit without ceasing. If the spiritus salis spirit of salt did not receive a proper earth from the elements, it could not sprout nor take on a body. Mark this well. Every life has its own different course, and its life comes down from above. Since each thing that is above and under the earth has its own salt spirit, all things have gone through fire, air, water, and spirit, they are compounded, built up in order, and made fruitful. The water dwells with the earth, and must also be changed into earth. Its extract is a salty being, and an incombustible, enduring fiery oil, the key that unlocks everything and transforms it into its own likeness. Earth and water must always be together, heavenly and earthly must mingle, and so intermingle that from the beginning water and spirit must become one. Heaven indeed is the most holy being by itself, its astral fiery, watery anima soul works day and night. These two are reconciled, water with fire. When it is mingled, it is transformed into a spiritual being, in which the fiery spirit lies hidden. If it dies, then it is born again anew. The earth also has its fire, its air and water, and its ground moisture. The green which is born therein is the blessed matter of the philosophers. Through the mingling of earth and fiery spiritual water, the extracted salt is dissolved, made fixed and fire-resistant, and enduring in its power. The ancients had no other matter, nor could they find any, which revealed everything, other than this. And when the artist extracts from this fatty substance his clear salt, and makes it into oil, which can easily be done, and into this salt, spirit, or oil puts his sulfur, and so mingles the two together, then he will find that the one willingly takes the other, and must be reconciled with it. Our sulfur, if it were not imbibed with its argento vivo living silver, quicksilver, must remain dead forever. But when its spirit is breathed back into it, and it is moistened and refreshed with it, then it dissolves and takes form in such a way that it can become nothing else than a good body. When, therefore, our sulfur ac argentum vivum sulfur and living silver are united de novo anew with one another, and each has made the other enduring, then they are called the double mercury of the metals, or the Philosophorum vitriol of the philosophers. All else is false. Therefore the artist must and shall first purify each of our two matters from its sortibus impurities. When this has been done, then the artist can join both together again, and bring them into one. However, he must take heed that the woman not rule over the man, but the man over the woman. Concerning this see Wasserstein der Weisen Waterstone of the Wise, Part 2, and Philosophisches Vaterherz Philosophical Fatherheart. When the seed on the fields receives too much rain and flooding, then it spoils and rots, but when it scarcely rains, and only at the greatest heat a fine dew falls at night, then the dew refreshes all growth, so that not only all grains and fruits, but also hay, straw, and garden vegetables, may be gathered. So it is here also, a little movement is as good as a great flood. Therefore warmth and moisture must always help a thing forward. Cold at the wrong time is harmful to all growths, as the farmer best sees and understands. Just as the earth cannot be without dew and sunshine, but would remain fruitless, so it is also with our philosophical field. If it were not sprinkled with its portion of water, which is its own wife, or mercurial or salt water, then the body, as our metallic sulfur, after its putrefaction, could not be made into a fluid substance, inwardly spiritual, later fixed and resistant to fire. For although our mercurius mercury may not directly form our sulfur, which is by nature fixed, namely, not make it into tincture, yet if our sulfur is to take on a new form, virtue, and life, then it must first die again in its own salt water, spirit, and life, rot, relinquish its body, and thereafter rise up clarified, most powerful, to appear again and perform great works. As soon as our sulfur and salt are both well generated, the first in 12 parts to the sight, the other in 1 part, mixed together in a dissolving dish, and dried, it does not at once show its power. But if both are placed in a small flask, violin, with at least 3 parts of air remaining in it, and our child lying in the mother's womb, not yet living, is again given the 12th part of its own milk, though it tastes salty, for nourishment, the flask being well sealed, placed in the natural oven, and everything again dried, then the artist should give 7 times in succession, each time only the 7th part of the first 12th part, for nourishment, as due to the child, always letting it dry well. Thus it will come about that after the 4th imbibition our child will not only dissolve all metals, but also reduce them into prima materiam first matter, and thereafter become noble, in such a way that quantitas and qualitas quantity and quality will yield nothing to one another. But if each had been left alone by itself, and had not been purified of its sortibus impurities and mingled together, then neither the sulfur nor the salt would in the least have been of any use, nor produced any fruit. Therefore the artist must, from the very beginning, see to it that he purifies each as best as possible before he brings them together. Otherwise, both could accomplish nothing. At that time, while they still stood together upon one stem, they would have formed a far better metal, if beneath the earth, in the clefts, streams, and fields, no adverse things had stood in the way. But since nature found it advisable to separate sulfur, ac sal sulfur and salt, man and woman, through their spiritual death, to reduce them into their primum ens first being, in order from both to form a better one, so must every seeker well consider and reflect why and for what cause nature has done this, whether, as a rational investigator, he should follow nature, and likewise draw his principia principles from and out of the metals, or whether he must derive them from vitriol, urine, or saltpeter. Man and woman are one body, and when man and woman do not receive their due nourishment, namely food and drink, then through lack thereof they become weakened, die, rot, and decay into dust and ashes. Out of the same, according to the promise, a new man shall arise. Just so, and in no other way, is it with our work. Out of its reduced mass, a young phoenix shall and will be born. When the farmer has sown his wheat, corn, lentils, peas, and the like, he leaves it to God and nature to rule and govern. God and nature give rain late and early, the sun moderates coolness and dew, warmth promotes growth. So, and in no other way, should the artist proceed, only this is to be observed, that he must himself give his matter rain and dew. Yet he must apply no other fire than the natural one. Thus he will not only prepare his twofold mercury, but also, at last, bring forth a fixed, fire-resistant tincture stone. Since kind nature now gives us sufficient materia matter into our hands, in which we may and can work, the artist need only remove from it the useless part, but keep the pure, namely sulfur, sal sulfur and salt, and wisely join them together, so that the one must enter into the other, and bring itself forth. Thus the philosophers work with like things, and just as like loves its like, so also it is fitting that like be joined with like. The wise man shall add neither aqua fortis nitric acid, nor aqua regis aqua regia, nor spiritum vini spirit of wine, alcohol, nor oleum salis oil of salt, nor vitriol, nor niter, nor any other foreign thing to his work. Otherwise, if he did so, he would ruin our sulfur and argentum vivum living silver, quicksilver, and from its metallic nature make a worthless mineral. Our subjectum subject which we use to dissolve our sulfur must be of the body, kind, and nature of our sulfur, and the solvent which must make our sulfur fluid, and afterwards again fixed, must be sui generis, naturae and speciae of its own kind, nature, and species. For if both were not of one essence and metallic nature, then they also could not be brought back together again into one. Our subjectum subject is man and woman, brother and sister, they come from one body and must again become one body. And this takes place without any reluctance, for the reason that they were formerly together in one body. For in the beginning they had one and the same root, and also stood together upon one stem. But after they were separated and divided, which took place without their will, therefore the new conjunction and marriage is all the more pleasant and refreshing to them, so that even if they are united and coupled 20 times, they will never again wish to separate or be parted for eternity, but remain united together, the more so because then they are the beginning and the end of the tincture. The sulfur of the wise can be dissolved and extracted by no other solvent than solely and alone by its natural menstrual water, dissolvent, which sprang forth and separated itself from its precious body. Hence no other solvens is suitable for this, which could rightly dissolve its body, namely the sulfur, from the bottom, and extract its soul, except precisely the sulfur's own fiery or spiritual salt water. Therefore, make your philosophical, spiritual salt water or solvents correctly. At the beginning it is black, colored, greasy, stinking, misty, and poisonous. Draw from it the sal central salt, the mercurium microcosmic mercury, the sal aut mercurium metallorum salt or mercury of the metals, then you will see, when the mercurius has been brought into the form of salt or oil, that from him and through him, and by means of the same, you will bring forth from our metallic sulfur, as the true seed of the metals, the germ, and promote the growth of the philosophical tree of gold. For these above two are alone the one true matter of the Philosopher's Stone. The spirit of Mercurius is elemental, wholly and entirely without reservation, subject to all higher spirits and stars, namely to all sulfur and seed of the great lights, from whence also our seed draws most of its influence. And because it has as yet no certain form, nor any shape, it therefore takes to itself the spirit of the sulfur of each metal, just as one can impress into sealing wax all kinds of engraved seals. And just as the earth, by attracting the water, is impregnated, so that through its continuance it is made fit for bringing forth and nourishing plants. So also is it with our Mercurius, if it encounters the elemental sulfur of gold, then it becomes gold, of silver, then it becomes silver, in sum, it mingles and adapts itself to such form, substance, and figure, as the power of the seed is disposed to. Without the mingling of our Mercurius, however, nothing comes to pass. Common water, when it is mingled and boiled with vegetable or animal things, takes to itself the power of the thing with which it has been mingled. So also does our philosophical Mercurius mercury, this mingles itself with all kinds of sulfur, golden, solar, lunar, venereal, or martial. When it has only been boiled together in a natural way with one of these kinds of sulfur, then it has also taken on its nature and substance, so that it can form and transmute another metal according to the seed's kind. Our mercurius is solely and alone the water of all metals, in and through it they undergo a change and alteration, one nature taking on another. For as soon as the mercurius has extracted the seed of gold from the body, it is impregnated with its nature, just as water in which flesh or vegetables have been boiled takes on their quality. In our mercurius, the seed and metallic seed is altered and transformed, the seed's color is also changed, and it hides itself under the form and figure of our mercurius, so that one cannot distinguish them both by color until at last, when both are coagulated. Our mercurius is not best found above or upon the earth, but rather in the house of Saturn. Thus, when after their purification our sulfur and mercurius are united together, then, and not before, is it called the Mercurius Philosopher Mercury of the philosophers. Then, and not before, does it dissolve gold and silver, and mingle itself with them, so that it can no longer be separated from them. Quicksilver, aqua fortis nitric acid, aqua regis aqua regia, and other corrosives indeed dissolve gold and silver in appearance, but they do not reconcile themselves with the gold or silver. As soon as one brings all together into the fire, the corrosives part from them, and the metal is not regained without damage and loss. With our metallic sulfur and mercurius, however, the matter is of a quite different nature. For when both are well purified, joined together, and formed, then they not only dissolve all metals, whether gold, silver, or copper, but also tin, iron, lead, and quicksilver, they also ennoble them in qualitate and quantitate, quality and quantity, and in no wise diminish them. Whoever therefore knows how to make the double mercurium Bernhard's double mercury, and can provide himself with gold, silver, lead, or tin, will have cause for great joy. Our double mercurius has in itself a white and a red sulfur, which is incombustible and fixed. Common quicksilver makes the metallic bodies black and foul, the Mercurius Philosophorum makes them white and red. Common and rough quicksilver, when vexed and sublimed by fire, becomes ever more volatile and ever less fixed. The Mercurius Philosophorum, however, the more it is boiled or calcined with its own golden sulfur, the thicker, more tractable, and more fixed it becomes. Now, the Mercurius Philosophorum could accomplish nothing, if it had not first been transformed, with the help of its sulfur, from one nature into another. But when it has been coagulated, hardened, frozen, and changed, then it also hardens, shapes, and causes everything else to be frozen, fixed, and enduring. Therefore we coagulate, harden, and shape our mercurium with its sulfur, and bring it into such a condition that it can harden, thicken, and shape all other quicksilver. For when it has been thickened and formed by the cooking with the sulfur or metallic seed, then it alters and transmutes in 1 hour more than nature itself under the earth could otherwise have accomplished in many years. This, then, is one of the greatest sciences, when we are able to thicken our mercurium mercury, which, however, cannot be done without its metallic seed. He, therefore, who can thicken the mercurium holds the key in his power with which he can open and shut the doors to our stone. The sulfur of the metals is and remains the prima materia, first matter, the soul, the form, and the metallic seed of the stone. Our mercurius is, however, its body, materia solvens dissolving matter, and also earth. Sulfur is the man, Sal salt the woman, she must and shall be impregnated by her natural bridegroom. The metallic sulfur is the fatness of the earth of the wise. And the metallic mercurius, but not common quicksilver, when it has been compounded, united, and formed together with the sulfur of nature, is then the fat earth of the wise, which brings forth its proper fruit, for it has power to transmute and to change. By itself alone, our mercurius, if it has not been formed and multiplied with its metallic sulfur, can do nothing. For our metallic sulfur raises our mercurius to a very high degree of excellent warmth, and then gives it first the generative power and the enduring virtue of being able to propagate itself. It draws absolutely from the elemental sulfur, in that it takes to itself the form of each metal, since it has no definite form of its own, which is added to it, and receives the metallic seed, as its man, most lovingly. Just as a woman receives the seed of her husband, it becomes pregnant from it and produces a child. As soon as our mercurius has been impregnated and formed with the form or seed of gold or silver, so soon does it also transform the mercurium of every imperfect metal into gold or silver. If the farmer does not put good seed into his well-prepared earth, then he will not receive good fruit. And if he has not first cleansed, sifted, and prepared his earth, in which he sows the seed, from all filth, then the sown seed cannot well sprout and take root because of the weeds, for the weeds not only take away the best nourishment from it, but also at once choke the young plant, so that it cannot receive the influences of the stars, dew, and air, as it rightly should. Therefore also does a poor farmer reap little good fruit. Just so is it with our mercurius and seed, or with the field and seed of the metals. If we do not most thoroughly cleanse our mercurius and its seed, and wash it from its filth, then the mercurius would accomplish nothing good in the seed. But when we then put into our mercurius its pure sulfur, which is the living gold of the wise, then both can rightly perform their office. And then our golden sulfur shines forth in the mercurius as nothing else but as a set gemstone in gold or silver. And if this also were not to happen, then our mercurius mercury, without the addition of this fiery essence, would not be able to generate anything metallic. Therefore our philosophical sulfur, mingled with its virginal earth or with its mercurius, are the two natural instruments and the most necessary parts from which our blessed stone shall and must be made. Without the sulfur of the wise, our work cannot be accomplished, for this metallic sulfur is alone the living gold of the children of wisdom. It is the one matter from which the sun is born, our golden tree. It is also a key that can open and shut the door. It is the soul, the form, and the metallic seed of gold and silver. When the wise have gathered the metallic seed in a natural way, they call it their prima materia, first matter, and this sulfur is precisely that necessary thing which they have kept so highly and so much concealed in their writings, and to which they have given so many names. Every fertile earth, through the cooperation of moisture and warmth, imparts its virtue and increase to all growing things, so that they may not only grow, but also mature and ripen, so also under the earth, in metals and minerals. These are formed and matured through the necessary warmth and moisture, after mercurius and sulfur have been mingled together. Yet without the mingling of mercurius, the sulfur would not be able to generate nor produce. For insofar as the sulfur were not mixed and maintained with the fiery moisture of mercurius, and the mercurius were not mingled and sustained with the dryness of its sulfur, nothing noble could come of it. When sulfur, mercurius, and salt are united together, then they are called the three beginnings of the metals. Yet to us no more than two are visible, namely sulfur and salt. The third, as spiritus salis aut mercurii, spirit of salt or of mercury, which arises from both, is invisible to us and not comprehensible, except that those who know it and mark its vires powers, who possess in this matter sufficient ground and experience, can attest. These two and three bring forth pure gold, solely through their strength and virtue. Therefore sulfur and salt are called the fertile earth of the metals, because through their mutual mingling the metals were born, their hardness, consolidation, and capacity to be shaped into ingots, hammered bars, and sheets, came forth thereby. From these two, and out of them, arises the mediator, namely the spiritus mercurii, spirit of mercury. The one cools the hot body, so that it must assist in begetting and working out, the other tempers the fiery body, so that in such a natural way, and by the mingling of both bodies, they must become one, and obtain a fixed, firm, and fire-resistant substance. Thus, when the mercurius duplex double mercury drives its spirit, vapor, and fume so that these circulate, it excites and helps along its two principia principles to beget and to perfect. The spirit alone has strength and virtue to make its body spiritual. The salt coagulates and joins itself with its body and spirit, and makes them both lasting and permanent. The sulfur, however, as prima materia metallorum, first matter of the metals, gives the body, but both are driven and advanced by the spirit, so that they may be found fixed, lasting, and enduring. Whoever wishes to reach the end happily must beware not to give his body too often and too much to drink, lest it drown and suffocate. But only so much should be allowed that the body is merely moistened, so that it may all the sooner dry again and become thirsty. If the farmer's seed receives too much moisture, or even flooding, then the seed must suffocate, drown, and perish. So also is it with the seed of the philosophers. The sal metallorum salt of the metals, which has been leached out from the ashes of our mercurius mercury, must be cleansed of all earthly accidents and be dissolved into salt and water. Then it is called our mercurius, namely the simple one, but the spirit of mercurius is found in experience to be restless, as the most useful tool for the working out of our matter. When, therefore, our spiritus mercurii spirit of mercury, salt, and sulfur have been well formed together, then, and when they are to be held as one and the same, then, and not before, do they dissolve gold and silver, and cannot again be separated from the silver or gold, but remain united together. It is no small art to bring forth the sulfur from its ore pure and clean, and also to extract the salt of the wise from the fatty earth in purity, and to set both together in due proportion, to imbue and to form them. This is a short sermon, but whoever understands it knows the beginning and the end of the whole work. I have written here and there more extensively about it, for your better instruction. See Wasserstein der Weisen Waterstone of the Wise and the Philosophisches Vaterhers Philosophical Fatherheart. I do not without cause repeat a thing several times, for I hope that, when a matter comes before you more often, you will the sooner conceive and grasp it. Oftener and fewer imbibitions, says a great philosophous philosopher, is always the best measure, and also furthers the work. Whoever wishes to bake bread must only take as much water for kneading and adding for moistening as is necessary. If he makes the dough too wet, the bread will not swell, it will not rise, and cannot bake properly, but it becomes a salty watery substance which is not useful for the stomach, but rather burdensome. In the same manner should also a philosophist deal with his water and meal, that is, with his salt, spirit, and sulfur. If he pours too much spiritum mercurii spirit of mercury upon his sulfur, then the sulfur cannot dry, swell, ripen, and become fixed, but instead of a spiritual body, there will be made from it a ruined, dead metallic corpse. Another philosophist says, our whole work is washing and cooking. To rightly understand this, the two principia principles must first be well purified, then compounded, often moistened, and always well dried again. Then everything will turn out according to your wish. For just as a child, being nursed by its mother, takes no more for itself than need requires, when the milk is consumed and dried away, or when it becomes thirsty, it demands more imbibition. So also is it with our work. The child can and will take no other food and nourishment than its mother's milk. This is sui generis, naturae and speciae of its own kind, nature, and species. So also with the philosophical work. Further, our sulfur can and will take no other nourishment than only its own milk, which had departed from it. This is its metallic salt, spirit, and oil. With anything else it cannot and must not be sprinkled, moistened, or nourished, for what is not of its nature is contrary to it, and cannot be mingled or propagated with foreign salts or spirits. In all things like loves like, so also here in our work, our sulfur can and will accept no service except from its like. And even if another salt be added to it, yet it does not agree with the same, but either casts it off again, or else from the two a monstrosity is produced. He, therefore, who wishes to make the stone, says a philosophist further, should sprinkle and help it forward with dried wind, with the salt of nature, and with philosophical waters. Just as the dew moistens and refreshes all vegetabilia plants and mineralia minerals, also animalia animals, so too shall the wise man, in another manner, moisten and refresh his sulfur. And just as then warmth must help everything to grow and thrive, so also do our sulfur and mercurius sulfur and mercury, for as long as they have not yet attained their ripeness, they are always eager to receive moisture and warmth, and to help themselves forward. Through gentle warmth and moisture, all things are advanced. One may easily observe whether the sulfur is thirsty and requires fresh imbibition. When a man drinks more than he should or than is necessary, it harms his health, as daily experience confirms. Therefore a moderate draught helps sooner, but excessive drinking casts everything into confusion. The washing and purification of our two bodies must be carried out with caution. At their conjunction, moistening and drying must be moderate, modest, and very little. All things must be preserved in their power and in life, thus also our sulfur should be moistened with and through its fiery water or oil, only so much that it must not drown, suffocate, or seep away, but be preserved in its life and brought forward unto its ripeness. For indeed, through repeated imbibition with its own milk, or aqua mercurii, sive salus water of mercury, or of salt, and again drying out, after many imbibitions and minglings, it becomes much nobler and more spiritual. Soul and spirit must be reconciled and brought back into one, otherwise, and without this, the seeker would find little, and still less enjoy the fruits of the metallic tree. Every understanding person will thus find in truth that the materia prima metallorum first matter of the metals, as well as the modus procedendi method of procedure for preparing the Philosopher's Stone, must be very simple and plain, for nothing else but cooking and washing furthers it. One needs neither wood, nor coal fire, lamp fire, horse dung, lime, nor corrosive waters, such as oleum salus communis oil of common salt, aquaforte nitric acid, oleum vitrioli oil of vitriol, nor anything else for this. Au contraire, on the contrary, just as nature causes all things above and under the earth to grow and ripen, so also here in our work. If it is still not clear enough for you, then consider it further. I know not how I could write it more clearly or understandably. To represent the matter more plainly I hold to be the greatest sin, inasmuch as it cannot be given more clearly to those whom God has not appointed thereto. The world today strives only after riches, to be seen above others, to live in pleasure and excess, in idleness and vanity. But to do good to one's poor neighbor, to help him in need, there is no one at home for that. Yet just as God in the beginning, at the creation of the world, made and created all things out of nothing, so too will he also withhold from everyone who does not conform to his will, and will blind their eyes, so that even in broad daylight they miss the right path, and out of everything they touch, do, or make, they can bring forth nothing. But to the pious and God-devoted hearts, whose aim is nothing else but the glory of God and the benefit of their beloved neighbor, God will, even without their expecting it, be a bright light in the greatest darkness, and will lead them upon level paths. To which end I also, when I shall have learned the station, walk, and condition of each, will endeavor as much as possible to assist, and will take it to heart. So that this little tract may not be regarded as a useless writing, I will add still one or another thing from the true writings of the philosophers. This is done for no other cause than that the diligent seeker, through these repeated reminders and citations of proven writers, may recognize, learn, and understand the one true beginning, progress, and end. I therefore say once more, with a great man, by way of abundance. My friend, whoever you are, great or small, poor or very rich, old or young, if you will not go yourself into the natural workshop of the metals, and there observe, how? From what? With what? And by what means nature makes metal and ore, then it will be impossible for you to arrive at the truth. Yes, all your effort will be in vain. I have already sufficiently shown and proved, that the heavenly dew and air, with the atomy atoms or spirit, fiery sparks of the sun, which the sun receives from the primo mobile prime mover, through the influence of the stars and the movement of the sun, these fiery spirits must and shall be imparted not only to all vegetabilia and animalia plants and animals but also to all mineralia ac metalla minerals and metals under the earth, as a necessarium quid necessary thing, indeed as life, growth, and preservation, to a definite substance. Without this fire nothing could subsist, for what, on clear days, this fire consumes too much, must by night be refreshed and revived by the cool dew of the moon, because through the drying of the beating rays, the so-called fiery sparks have, as it were, taken on a cooling nature. Of this dry and watery fire, or fiery water, many philosophers have written, but the greater part have little understood its virtue. Yet although the dew, mingled with this likewise most necessary fire, is the refreshment and quickening of all created things, nevertheless it is not for that reason the prima materia metallorum first matter of the metals. Rather, nature, by opening up the subterranean waters, makes mineral sulfurs and salts, and then their mixture. This, when the fiery water penetrates usque ad centrum terrae down to the center of the earth, and thereby illumines such a mixture, is first brought into motion, so that it must become prima materia first matter. And the purer the metallic salt is, as well as the sulfur and stones, the purer a metal is produced from it. When, then, you yourself have gone down into the workshop of the metals under the earth and have well observed everything, then you will honestly concede to me that it is thus and not otherwise. For there you will see and find salt, sulfur, and mineral waters in many heterogenea and much besides present, as now you will encounter various genera Metallorum ac mineralium kinds of metals and minerals. You will at once turn your thoughts so as not to miss the right path, nor in the future in the least divide in vain anything more in the ore of vitriol, vulgar mercurius mercury, quicksilver, common quicksilver, bodily or indestructible metals, urine, blood, or any other unnatural subjectum subject. You will not, in vain, summon torments, furnaces, coals, all kinds of glasses and vessels, but will rather strive to proceed in the way which kind nature, under the earth, as appointed by God, has shown. There you will find that fire and water generate, nourish sulfur and salt, bring them together, form, and finally fashion them. Stone likewise is made from the elements, only nature has for this a quite different division, mixture, and long time for forming. Therefore metals and stones have this only in common, that their life has in the end become a fire-resistant essence, which can be reduced by nothing else than its own primum ens first being. Whoever holds otherwise knows nothing at all. Today's laborants are so reckless that they set aside even nature's beginnings, movement, and purpose. For they imagine that they could form a metallic being in substance out of vegetable, animal, and mineral things. Just as little as ever an artist has made an elephant out of a bee, just so little will or can the laborant make a metal out of salt, vitriol, blood, urine, ashes, and the like. But whoever lets go of all useless things, and turns himself to the right path of the metals, remains upon it, and continues forward, to him, without reading many books, searching and experimenting, at the right time the spirit of the universal and its power, which he uses for growth and reduction, will be found. Since, however, much that has been said from the beginning is simple, and to the unfathomable centro-center, as many other philosophers also explain, the infinite wisdom, voludi ex unitate infinitas as if infinity from unity, and the so many different works of all nature flow forth, as it were, from one unsealed fountain, and spread and divide themselves into so many and various beings, qualities, forms, and figures of all visible and invisible creatures, while yet the primal being, as said, is only one thing and remains so, and only changes and qualifies itself according to the quality of its receiver and keeper. Therefore has this one thing also been written of in so many ways, and the Parva Hermeta schedule a little schedule of Hermes has grown into so many and great volumes. But writings which are not founded upon the one true cornerstone cannot be regarded or recognized as writings of truth. Rather, all such coffers and books are to be counted among the number of seductive books, and indeed very many seekers are led astray by such false writings, turned from the right path, and cast into ruin. Unless God himself lets the light shine, so that a man learns to understand what is the distinction between a vegetable, animal and mineral plant, animal, and mineral, he will hardly be able to grasp nor attain the metallic being. For the sake of my brother, I have wished to bring this little tract to the light of day as an addition, in order that he may examine from it whether he walks in the right way. The more lovingly they receive it, the more pleasing it will be to me, that they may be further instructed in the truth, and may bring all to the goal where they have wished to come. Whoever once knows and has the true ends being, he will also see the light in the greatest darkness, but whoever has it not, nor knows nor sees it, will also be blind at the brightest midday. This fire nourishes itself in all things, but it does not so easily allow its radiance to be felt, because it does not always find one who wishes to reflect and experience its fiery rays. But such fire is corrupted by harmful moisture and earthly discord, so that the spark cannot take hold, thus the light can accomplish nothing, but must withdraw elsewhere. The seed that falls upon a rock or thornbush cannot easily sprout, but must perish and suffocate, because it cannot take root nor draw fire and water as its nourishment. But that which is sown upon good ground, and receives moisture for its root, can and will seize upon that spark at once and never let it go. Through continual persistence, blowing upon and fanning it, the spark grows ever greater upon the tinder, until out of this small spark there arises a bright fiery radiance, from which a light may be kindled and set upon the candlestick. so also is it with this work. Whoever descends into the ore mines with them, and only makes known and discovers to himself the smallest spark of the metallic fiery water, sulfur, and salt, he will, by continual blowing, that is, investigation, make the light of the metals ever greater, in such a manner that he will without delay attain his goal. Above all, find the true foundation. All metals are in the beginning fluid, in the course of time they are, as their sulfur ac sal sulfur and salt, by the fiery spirit of mercury, made fixed and fire-resistant. The sulfur has its fire for decoction within itself, but it would have to lie dead forever if it were not aroused by the fiery spirit of the world, to enter into a struggle with its wife. This struggle, however, though it seems to be against itself, is yet to be regarded as nothing other than a true struggle of love, where sulfur ac sal sulfur and salt constantly embrace and contend with one another until the one has overcome the other and made it permanent. I have already often said, the purer the principia principles are mingled together, and the purer the stone they encounter, the purer an ore they will form. Nature needs neither wood, nor coal fire for this, nor sulfur from vegetabilibus, mineralibus, or animalibus plants, minerals, or animals, but solely its easily flowing metallic sulfur and salt. I mean by mineral sulfur that which is smelted and extracted from all kinds of salts, vitriol, also tin, copper, iron, silver, or mercurial ores. Ours, however, is quite another thing, and has a peculiar nature of its own, in that one can make from it whatever one wishes. If it be made into a medicine, it frees man from all sicknesses. Yet by itself alone it can accomplish nothing, its body must first be brought into agreement with it. A certain philosopher speaks of this. Gold and silver indeed accomplish nothing if they do not affect their primum ends first being. And this Theophrastus calls Electrum minerale immaturum immature mineral Electrum. This is the metallic sulfur and its mercurius, sal namely, salt. Whoever knows the one essence of the metals, possesses it, and knows how to handle it, and purifies each apart from its scribus dross, refuse, then joins and unites them together, which has a great similarity with bread baking, then the one embraces the other, they contend with one another for the heat, which shall lie uppermost, while they, through the Adeptorum influence of the stars, attract so much that the spirit of both becomes powerful in them. Then these two rot together, and through the putrefaction both give up their first form and assume a new one, through the natural warmth which is in both. The motion then makes the astral influences, and then generation begins. This is then brought about by the power of the natural fire. This modus method is agreeable to our matter, everything else, such as wood and coal fire, causes destruction. Nature alone has the power and authority to make out of these two principles, or universal matter, a metallic form. The kindly sun, through its vehement course and constant movement, arouses warmth in each element, to which especially the prima mobile prime mover, along with the 7 planets, and indeed all other spheres which the prima mobile drives around with it, contribute much. The stars are truly the best helpers and natural masters of art. Thus does nature work in all things that are created, that each may and shall bring forth and propagate after its kind. Each thing and seed also attracts with the greatest desire the power and virtue of the Adeptorum stars, just as a woman receives the seed of her husband. It is a noble influence that plays down from the planets upon the earth, even usque ad centrum terrae all the way to the center of the earth, not created in vain, for this influence has a peculiar and singular virtue in itself. But all virtues arise from the power of the prima mobile, otherwise they could not penetrate usque ad centrum terrae to the center of the earth, and thus every seed, through their mingling and being together, grows, generates, and matures, refreshed and driven forward. Thus, when this fiery watery power finds a pure or impure sulfur and salt, it unites itself with them, drives them forward, and brings it about that agens and patients the acting and the suffering lovingly embrace one another, and do not rest until they have attained their ripeness. Because of the different beginnings and matters, different forms and generations are also brought forth. The earth receives and conceives from heaven the necessary influence, through the likeness of the sun and the natural movement and warmth arising therefrom. Within the earth ascending vapors are born, which are the prima compositiones first composition. All vapors are cold and moist, otherwise they would not fall back again, nor could they otherwise be preserved in the earth. But when the vapors rise higher and reach the clouds, then they become warm and moist, and serve for the advancement and growth of everything. Those, however, which remain in the earth, from these nature in time makes a sulfur, which afterwards is called an agens acting principle, and argentum vivum living silver, quicksilver, which is the patiens passive principle. Thus does nature make out of the 4 elements, of the first composition, the second mixture, but all of it has been brought by nature into a proper measure. Consider this well, you students of nature. If you are as skillful as nature, you can from all your subjective subjects and useless things make or extract a primum ens first being, as nature can well do. She alone can make out of the elements a sulfur and a salt, mix them together, give a substance and form, ripen and fix them, also dissolve the thing again and reduce it into its principia principles, and communicate it to the seeker for his benefit. Therefore the sulfur of vitriol, of niter, of urine, or of any other source, as well as the salts from vitriol, urine, bismuth, soot, and the like, are of no use at all for the philosophical work. These things have no metallic form or essence, and therefore cannot unite with a metal, but rather separate again from it, as everyone will have found. From antimony alone, and from no other mineral, something may still be drawn forth, whose solar sulfur prefigures itself, as has been shown in the chymisch son chemical sun, with its splendor and brightness, set forth for the benefit of seekers. But from all other things no man will ever make the least possibility or profit, unless he has and knows the primum ens metallorum first being of the metals, which Theophrastus calls Electrum minerale immaturum immature mineral Electrum. That Basilius calls our compounded matter vitriolaire he has done rightly, for when our solar sulfur and its salt are brought together into one, the matter may indeed be rightly called vitriolaire. Only, it was never the opinion of Basilius to point anyone to extract the principia from the ore of vitriol or its boiled-out substance. In truth this cannot be proved. When the two, sulfur and mercurius, are joined together, they must immediately be purified. After their putrefaction a wholly new form arises, which is pleasing to the artist. But fermentation could not take place unless the inner warmth of our sulfur were stirred into motion by the cold spirit of our arsenici vivi living arsenic, yet the warmth overcomes the cold nature, and they become together one body or substance, much nobler than they were before. For if any material fire should be applied to them, then the state of both would be spoiled and driven away, and instead of a noble stone, a worthless coal, dust, or ashes might remain. Therefore, as has often been said, the artist must choose no more than one single creature, in which he can retain and hold together fire, air, water, and earth. Our metallic sulfur is the fire, our salt is the earth, everything else is lies and deceit. For our solar sulfur and salt, when they are well purified, compounded, and mingled together, dissolve, blacken, whiten, and redden themselves, without anything further being added. And when after the 9th imbibition they have formed themselves, then it is called our elemental tincture powder, which is so mighty that it even dissolves the corpus solis and luni body of the sun and moon, i.e. gold and silver in a crucible, not only dissolves, but also extracts from each the animum soul, and unites itself with the received body in such a manner that it cannot possibly be separated from it again. For it has made the corpus solis aut luni body of the sun or moon spiritual, has taken on its nature and essence, and thereby has become embodied. When it is then laid upon an imperfect metal, it can ennoble it so that it becomes gold or silver, according to that with which it has been fermented. The final fermentation with gold or silver is done in the open fire, in a covered crucible, for 3 days and nights. But for its first preparation one needs neither bath of Mary, wood, coals, clamps, nor hammer, wooden, stone, or iron vessels, horse dung, nor cool pits. Our 2 subjecta subjects require nothing else but the natural and heavenly fire. This awakens the elemental fire, since every matter by itself desires and seeks to have a form. Thus nature fashions, within the earth, in stones, veins, and clefts, out of that which the primum mobile prime mover and the astra stars press and drive there, first the argentum vivum living silver, quicksilver, then sulfur. When these 2 have been formed, then they are combined, revived by the new heavenly alka-aesthetic essence, and stirred to copulation, until they are visited and warmed so long that they have become one fixed body. Then the fruit stands upon its stem in rest and stillness, until it is gathered. If this does not happen, then it begins to rot and to revert again, to be reduced into its first beginnings and seed, which nature, as well as man, must then collect and further propagate. In such a manner the cold has become warm, and afterwards the dry has been changed into a moist for us. Here it is to be considered that dryness cannot grow nor subsist without moisture, just as little as moisture can bring forth anything without the dry. One must preserve the other according to its essence, otherwise the fifth essence, which is called and is our tincture, could not be generated. When our matters have been compounded together and have passed through putrefaction, then the fire becomes powerful, and gives birth to our form in the air. But the fire must first, as already said, be purified in the virginal earth. Then follows the water, which is our first matter, from which nature begins our ore. Sulfur and salt, agens and patience, the acting and the suffering, must be mingled and pressed to generation together. Otherwise, if the one does not resist the other, and the passive is not in such a manner overcome for further generation, that it must permit the increase, then all our effort and cost, though little they be, will have been in vain. Although the cost, apart from necessary clothing and food, of such men always seems great to the ignorant, it is abominable to those who neither know nor have the natural beginnings, or, if they did know and have them, would neither know how to purify nor to mingle them. But when the passive, stripped of its form, and overcome by the active, has been figured and retained, then they can no longer be separated nor divided from one another. From this there can then arise nothing else but a new form. The chaos of the wise, watery matter, which does not with the hands, namely their sulfur and salt, which Theophrastus calls his Electrum mineral Electrum, is the hyle, or first matter of all metals. When these are most highly purified and compounded together, then it is a solvent, which dissolves gold and silver, and improves all other metals. For these two have the power to give being to all the elements, to make them permanent, and to bring them into a form. Mark this well, how God in the beginning formed the first matter. From the first and purest part he created cherubim and seraphim, archangels, and all other angels. From the second part, which was not so pure, the heaven with all its lights. From the third part, however, the elements with their virtues. First the fire, this goes before all the others following, it is subject to no corruption, but has and retains the purest part, the quintessence, within itself. After this he made the air, this has as much of the quintessence in it as it requires. Lastly he separated the earth from the water, in this there is not so much of the quintessence as in the air and water. Yet, through the movement and warmth of the primum mobile prime mover, the sun, and all the planets, the spirit of the world, quina essentia quintessence, together with the moist dew, vapor, or mist, is driven through all firm stones, veins, clefts, and places, which imparts to everything under the earth as much of its power and strength as that which under the earth would form and generate itself can demand for its substance and activity. The air in itself is indeed moist, but through the circulation and movement of the primum mobile and all the astrorum stars so much warmth is breathed into and imparted to it, that it, though it must ever contend and be moved with warmth and cold, yet must refresh, quicken, green, blossom, and enliven all things. The water is indeed colder than the air, yet it likewise receives its fire from above. It is, however, mingled with the other elements, fire, air, and earth, in such a manner that it will not keep nor admit from one more than it requires. A small but unfailing example, when, on hot summer days, the heat penetrantly shines upon standing puddles, such puddle water purifies itself and finally dries up altogether. Its earth and salt left behind, however, is prepared and remains as a fat dung, useful for leaves and grass. The earth in and of itself is dry, and has the least part of the quintessence within it, as was already mentioned above. Yet it is, and becomes, by mixture of the water within the earth, more inclined to cold than to heat. Nevertheless, the earth has as much of the other elements in itself as it requires. If the warmth of the sun could warm and advance it in its innermost part, as it does with the earth above, to to all vegetabilia plants, then perhaps the mineralia minerals would not need so long a time for their maturation. But since there is a great difference between men and vegetabilia, there is an even greater difference between men and metals. Men must have the heavenly and elemental fire, and the warmth of the sun makes the life spirits, blood, and flesh of all animalia animals weak, so that the animals cannot resist even the smallest fire, nor remain uninjured in the fire. But the metals are born through the cold fire, therefore they can withstand all hot fire, even the greatest glow. And they are, in part, as gold and silver, rather purified than corrupted by the fire. And since the metallic fire, namely, the cold fire, is nonetheless also a fire, though few or none of today's philosophers can penetrate it, this is also one of the chief reasons why so few are found who have come into possession of the quinta essentia metallorum, fifth essence of the metals. That the metals and minerals grow continually under the earth is caused by the air that is pressed there and mingled. Nor will the most learned philosopher persuade himself that even the greatest cold is a highly purified and most penetrating fire, or is so, for cold is simply called cold, and warmth, warmth. But that warmth and cold must remain continually mingled together, this can and must be, for otherwise the agens acting principle would fail of the patient's suffering/passive principle, and so it would rest and stand still. Each element is preserved through the mixture and circulation of the other elements. Otherwise, if from the air, the water, or the earth the fiery element were withdrawn, these must lack it, fall together in a heap, and be turned into dust and ashes. Just as nothing out of nothing has created all, so also is it possible for him to turn everything back again into nothing. The earth, with the accession of the other elements, is in part the nourisher of all things, namely of the vegetabilia, animalia and mineralia plants, animals, and minerals. And although it, by itself, because of its dryness, is more allied to fire than to the other elements, nevertheless it still requires, for the things it brings forth, all that is to grow and live. Its greatest consistence is fire, air, and then water. The primum mobile, the astra stars, among which is also to be understood the warmth of the sun, must therefore, through their invisible breath and fire, properly called the heavenly fire, bring forth and generate all things. Fire, as the chief element, moves and drives the other elementa elements, that they must act. Through its warmth it furthers growth, and keeps everything in continual life movement so long as it shall live, yet the air must also contribute what is necessary. All seed which the earth has within itself goes, through the above-mentioned warmth conveyed from the air, and moderate moisture, into saturation, because its adherent moisture and cold must be awakened by the outshining of warmth. This is, and is done by, the air. This fire and water go forward, move everything, make it grow and lively, and just as it serves all things for growth, so also it purifies and cleanses all things. Fruits have been created for it, and its created creature will also be found in a state to be able to change it. The earth, water, or air, cannot by themselves bring a proper or formed being or substance back into its principia principles, unless the fire of the elements, or of totius naturae of the whole of nature, applies its efficacem efficacy. But fire alone could not accomplish such natural reductions, if not air and water, as mediators, gave their powers thereto. Yet the primum mobile, which is the mover and lord of all the elements, remains, and is the created power of all the elements. And this is the beginning and end of all things, according to the order which God has made for us. Now, my friend, you know from what origin, and how God has made the metals, and how or to what they are reduced. If you have a sufficient understanding of this, then thank God for it, and then continue to bring back the reduced principia together into one. Let everyone keep his eyes and ears open, and carefully observe the natural exactions and solutions, reductions, exactions, solutions, reductions. If these natural ways agree with your solutionibus, cohobationibus, sublimationibus, fixationibus and reductionibus solutions, cohobations, sublimations, fixations, and reductions of the sophists. If you work otherwise than nature, then do not think that your labor and expenses will be restored to you. No, rather your light, effort, cost, and toil will all be in vain. Therefore strive to produce that which God has given, seed and matter, and also a field in which to build, for God has created all things for the benefit of man. Thus also what has been reduced by nature into its prima mens first being, must serve and be useful to man. This, my friend, you must discover, seek, and bring forth. It is still quite possible to obtain and to have. Have you ever seen an artist in the world who made or created a species or form? Or can you create trees, leaves, and grass without their seed? Can you take apart and mix the elements? How then will you prepare the seed of each thing out of the elements? How could you possibly infuse new life into that which is dead? God and kind nature have reserved such power to themselves alone. Do not sin against your Creator. I have already often reminded you that God has imparted His blessing to every created thing, to multiply in its own kind. God and nature alone are Master and Lord. It is therefore in the power and authority of the wisest and most skillful man in no way to transmute a species, namely, a vegetable or animalish animal, into a metallic nature. It is altogether impossible. From where should man take the influences to give such things a substance? Which of mankind can mix or proportion the elementa? All has God made and brought into order, preserved by nature, and propagated through its own seed. Thus it is impossible that man, in one way or another, imagine what he will, could cause growth, change, dissolve, figure, or even reduce anything again into its prima mens first being. Nature brings our two subjecta subjects, which were formerly opposed to one another, to such a point that they become one single and inseparable thing, so long as the artist has first purified each apart separately, and then recombined them. Then the artist need do nothing more than moisten and dry them again after they have passed through purification and desiccation, until under the phoenix they are made enduring and fire-resistant. When the tincture has attained its ripeness, this is to be seen, when it flows upon a glowing plate like oil, and penetrates into the plate without smoke, just as oil into leather, then it is finished and good. It is to be lamented that most seekers persist in believing that they can form a metallic being and nature out of all manner of things, and are so obstinately stubborn that they even insist the Lapidis Philosophorum, sive quinta essentia Metallorum Philosopher's Stone, or fifth essence of the metals, must be drawn forth and perfected through the power and force of material fire. I have learned to my great harm that apart from our one true subjectum subject, which Theophrastus calls Electrum minerale immaturum immature mineral Electrum, there is nothing else but sulfur ac sal metallorum sulfur and salt of the metals. From no other single mineral nor metal have I found the least possibility, except from what the Hungarian ore of antimony has yielded. All other minerals and metals are useless, and who would want to trouble himself so much, and spend such expenses, when he has our argentum vivum living silver, quicksilver in possession, and with it can bring gold and silver back into their prima principia first principles, since God has reduced for his benefit a purer, fixed, and permanent sulfur, and made it into a prima mens? Therefore, whoever values his honor, wealth, and health, let him seek this one thing, and none other. If he does not know this, or cannot obtain it, let no one, whoever he may be, spend a single penny, waste no time, avoid using wood and coal fire or other foolish contrivances, lest he, too late, must lament his loss. Yet, whoever will not hear, must feel. I was not minded to write or make known any more. Only seeing that the greatest and largest crowd will not cease to inquire, and so that among 100,000 seekers perhaps not one might be found successful, having themselves become wise through great loss, I have, out of Christian compassion and pity, resolved to publish this exhortation and admonition for the comfort of the seekers. I say, I counsel, I wish from my heart, that God may further every inquirer, that he may be preserved and prosper in his service and good pleasure. For whoever first unites himself with God will lack nothing good. And he who stands well with God may surely inquire, search, and ponder, and rightly make known the metallic kingdom. I know for certain that through repeated investigation he will at last find and strike upon the middle point, and fasten his nail therein, to behold his target firmly and immovably. Moreover, I hope that every reader will take pleasure in my faithful counsel, which is without falsehood and deceit. God has commanded that every man should love his neighbor as himself. This command I wish to live by faithfully. Would to God that everyone who reads this little book would firmly resolve to do the same likewise. No false word, to my knowledge, is mixed in. And assuredly, if I had not been compelled for the sake of the unworthy, this writing might have been composed in few lines, and the manifest truth made public. But since God has also commanded that one should not cast pearls before swine, therefore have I, against my will, had to veil and curtain this writing with a small covering. He who will ask God for enlightenment, to him it will in due time be abundantly clear, and everything will turn out according to his wish and desire. Let the contradictory then rage against this as they will, pretending something else to be the prima materia metallorum, first matter of the metals, and seeking to suppress the truth. I know for certain they will one day lament their misstep. I declare once again to such people, that I will enter into no dispute with them, nor seek to draw anyone away from his own opinion. I hate all false delusion, and firmly believe that all useless slanderers and scribblers, on account of their crime and their falsely published and unfounded things, must and shall be called to account. That Basilius called our true subjectum subject of vitriol, I do not deny. For when our solar sulfur ac sal sulfur and salt have been duly mingled and dried, then in truth it is a most purified solar and lunar vitriol. The one true field of the wise, in which the sages must sow corporeal gold and silver, with which it unalterably unites, may then be carried on to lead, tin, copper, and iron. It enters into the same and makes such a metal noble in quantitate and qualitate, quantity and quality. Common vitriol, from copper and iron ores, is made only for dyers, to lay colors upon all kinds of wares. But what God and nature have made, and given us for the working of the true tincture, is at first a spirit, a fiery water, afterwards, and after long time, nature makes from it a metallic form and shape. When it is overripe, nature reduces it again into its first beginnings. The metallic form and substance were made out of sulfur and salt, but not out of combustible sulfur or common salt. No, rather nature, under the earth, from the fiery water and spirit, first forms an argentum vivum living silver, quicksilver, afterwards a pure sulfur. From both of these, according to occasion and time, she makes a noble or ignoble metal, a useful or a corrosive mineral. But nature is not able to make vegetabilia plants nor animalia animals out of mineral things. Nevertheless, some foolish laboratory sophists want to be flyers and castle builders, since they claim to make gold and metal from vitriol, urine, and excrements. Would to God that every inquirer would investigate nature rightly, and attempt nothing without nature's cooperation, but continue searching until he had seen the primum ens first being of all natural and created things. How much wood, coal, glass, and other things besides could then be spared for the needy and the poor? Open your eyes, you seekers, learn to distinguish inter quid and quote between what and how many. Which philosopher ever made from a cock a dove? Both are animalia animals, each is created after its own kind, and will associate and multiply only with its like. And yet the foolish laborant, in his conceit, thinks it a small matter to make a fine metal out of animal, vegetable, or mineral sulfur and salt. No, my friend, if you will not go into the true smithy, where the metals grow, and use its instrumenta instruments, you shall be excluded from the truth forever. For our tinctura solis, quintum esse metallorum tincture of the sun, fifth being of the metals can and must be extracted and perfected from nothing else than our Electrum minerale immaturum immature mineral Electrum or metallic seed. From anything else the Lapidis Philosophorum Philosopher's Stone cannot at all be made. Our Electrum minerale immaturum seems, to appearance, a trifling thing, for the sulfur, with its quartz or stone, is separated by the miners, thrown away, and trodden underfoot. Its fiery water and salt of nature are not esteemed at all, inasmuch as they are by the miners rather despised and shunned as the worst poison, indeed even more than the arsenical smoke and vapor, and destroyed. And yet this our Electrum minerale immaturum, after its preparation, is the highest and most excellent medicine for man and for metals. No man will ever fully plumb or experience its virtues. Does it seem a small matter to you that this sulfur and salt exalts gold and silver to a high degree, and even increases their weight? What is more, that the tincture, in the fire, as it were in a moment, transmutes and ennobles all imperfect metals into the finest gold and silver. Applied inwardly to man, it frees him from all sickness, restores him, renews all his lost strength, makes pure and healthy blood, and is, next to his five senses, his best helper, inasmuch as it clears away all that is adverse. Moreover, it sets a man into such a condition that he can powerfully assist and support his needy neighbor, without seeing his wealth diminished. But God will not have it that the seekers should thereby become slothful, languid, and prone to idleness. To conclude with a few words more, whoever knows how to prepare this one active, masculine, solar sulfur, by the addition of its own argentum vivum living silver or spiritus mercurii spirit of mercury, in a single vessel and furnace, which may be a vial, placed upon a solid support, and with the outward necessary heat disposed as the sun gives warmth, for the matter must not stand cold or freeze, and knows how to order it rightly and to arrange it well, need not doubt the happy outcome of the matter. By virtue of the power, force, and order which nature exercises in all things, and which is continually maintained and driven forward by the primum mobile prime mover, all things which have an esse being and substance are brought into life, growth, and movement, are preserved and ripened. For the materia matter, which has been born of the elements, stands under the holy command of nature to form itself into this or that, just as no thing can exist without soul or spirit, since without these nature could not form its corpus body, so also is our metallic beginning not without spiritual sulfur and salt, which is an argentum vivum living silver, quicksilver. All of it has sprung forth and come from the elements. For although in the beginning the materials are of unequal weight, yet nature alone knows how to qualify and specify them. Then the matter first takes a formum substantialum substantial form, postea accidentalis formum afterwards an accidental form, and all this through heavenly cooperation, which are the primum mobile prime mover and astra stars, inasmuch as these are altogether the helpers of nature. Nature has from God all things in her power, and she imparts also to man everything he can ask and desire of nature. There are four greatest grades or degrees which God allows to be perfected through nature, of which the first has only esse and being. These are the metals, minerals, mountains, and stone. The second degree is the vegetabilia plants, which have being and swift growth, therefore they are the sooner subject to decay. The third degree has a peculiar sensitivity, yet no actual reason, except that they yield themselves to what is pleasing or displeasing, and these are the wild and tame animals. The fourth and noblest gradus, which is the highest and most perfect, is that wherein man is found. In this degree the other three are completed. Yet at creation God assigned to man something more, which nature was not able to give him. First, the image of God. Secondly, the rational soul breathed in by God. And thirdly, the free will. As the image of God, all three kingdoms, the animal, the vegetable, and the mineral, must be subject to man's will, since he is the image of God, and all has been created for man's good. The rational, immortal soul God has adorned with understanding and reason, without dimension, which indeed is not subject even to the passibilia things capable of suffering, our body which is set under certain measure. Yet, if man does not abide in true steadfast faith, but acts against God's command, then the soul shall not go into damnation for the body's sake, which consists of blood, flesh, and bone, but because it inclined itself into sin. The free will, however, is something incomprehensible. For as soon as man but thinks upon something, all five senses willingly seek to perform and accomplish what that will desires. For then the eyes see, the feet and hands move, go, and do what the will desires. Therefore no one can prove or believe that nature could give man will, understanding, soul, and wisdom. No. All this man has received from God, as his image, as his special benefit, so that man may obediently observe God's will and deeds and commandments, and may praise, glorify, and thank God. Just as nature derives her scientia and wisdom merely from the four elements, which are the fifth essence of the elements, and forms now this, now that out of them, so no one else but nature alone can reduce and bring each thing back again into its beginnings. I repeat this often, so that you, reader, may form a habit, firm grasp of it. Nature turns the upper into the lower and the lower into the upper, and with such pleasant circumspection, that she never needs wood, or coal fire, nor anything else for it. Yes, what is more, nature preserves every substance and esse in its life and moisture, but as soon as the moisture, which is the thing's fiery salty water, spirit, earth, and life, and, so to speak, the man's woman, separates itself from its body and man, then the body remains standing empty. This fiery spirit is the growing power of each thing, called argentum vivum, and as soon as it feels the least fire, it vanishes and goes off in the form of vapor and smoke. But whoever would tightly seal it and catch it in a vessel set before it, must take care that he bring no misfortune upon himself. Surely the sophists, even if they have it, will achieve nothing from it, for as soon as they seek to prepare it with any fire, to serve and obey them, they will indeed experience that all their labor can accomplish nothing good. Never has anyone, by help of his lazy furnaces, digesting or fixing ovens, brought anything notable, in truth, scarcely anything at all, to market. For the reason that they neither know nor have ever visited the region of India or Ophir. Most have, on account of their sophistical processes, fallen into poverty. Since then everyone sees that the elementa are moved and sustained by the prima mobile, and that apart from these the whole of nature can accomplish nothing, nor effect anything, therefore must a true philosophus handle also the natural matter of the philosophers, which nature has extracted and compounded out of the elements, in accordance with nature, and do nothing against nature's will or action. For the heavens, this I have often said, give to each thing, through their influence, a glorious being and form. Thus also all natural works are not artificially prepared or ornamented, but nature proceeds quite simply, plainly, and at leisure. So also must the artist not hasten, but wait patiently for the outcome. But the modern laborants strive with all diligence to construct artificial furnaces for figuration, digestion, and calcination, and afterwards to have at hand great and small vessels, retorts, vials, flasks, alembics, sublimation glasses, stork's beaks, and such artificial glassware. Afterwards one knows better than another how to direct the fire. Thus in the lazy furnace there must be so many registers, in the digesting oven so many, out of another helmet a hidden tube must go, and his vial, filled with spiritus vinioli alcohol, spirit of wine or urine, must be kept only gently warm, to turn the closed spirit into earth, and if this succeeds, then it sits true. Another makes his digesting oven so artfully that his glass must receive no greater heat or warmth than a fart, or stinking vapor, that an old woman lets go at her spinning wheel. Are these not all fine artificers and most praiseworthy many-locked birds? Furthermore, the vials must also be sealed or closed, artfully smelted shut. I once had to spend 10 thalers on such a presumptuous so-called philosopher, that he might allow me to enjoy and learn this trick, and this man was by profession a sugar baker, or a ruined bleach washer, in a certain prominent Swabian residence. When then the laborants, at last, their something has turned into nothing, then it comes to cursing and swearing. The oven was not right, the registers did not draw, the glass must not have been properly made. If, however, it burst apart into pieces, then nothing else was to blame but the fire made too strong. Such fata misfortunes or disasters I have with my greatest loss innumerable times experienced. Therefore I can all the more credibly warn everyone, whoever will see, let him see. Once I saw a vial burst apart, the spiritus spirit, vapor that flowed upon the hot sand went off as a vapor. Help, heaven! How the sugar baker lamented! I was supposed, I know not in whose name, to bring forth recipients, sugar glasses, or dissolving dishes, otherwise we would all be lost and ruined. Yes indeed, in truth, if the simple red enamel fellow had had 4 companies of Turkish spahis in his pay, fed, and under his command, they would have had to mount in haste, without saddle and stirrup, with drawn sabers, to pursue and capture this spirit, but it would not yield, and slipped away. So it still goes to this day. To a true possessor of the art nothing more lies in charge than that he take the true matter, dissolve, solver, extract, extrahire, purify, purificire, mix, and let it pass through putrefaction. Afterwards he must often dry it again and always moisten it again, just as mist or dew moistens the soil. and so long continue with imbibing and drying until his sulfur and salt have united and completely taken form. It is to be seen when sulfur and sal flow upon a glowing plate without smoke, and penetrate and transmute into the plate, just as oil into leather. The artist has no need first to separate from his matter the four elements. No, this would be as little possible for him to do as it is possible to create out of the elements the Electrum minerale immaturum. For who among mortals is so wise as to create sulfur and salt out of the elements? And yet there are such foolhardy spirits who dare to make metal out of vegetable and animal substances, but each has had to repent his own folly. Whoever therefore will follow my faithful counsel will indeed experience that I, without falsehood and deceit, am solely intent upon serving my neighbor. Therefore I have abandoned all impossible things, and recommended the sole mineral Electrum immaturum, which is our sulfur and argentum vivum living silver, quicksilver, to seek this and work with it. At the same time also, let everyone well consider how nature, above and beneath the earth, is accustomed to proceed and act, whether, when she fashions vegetabilia, animalia and mineralia, in her workshop, she also employs all manner of artificial glasses, retorts, wood, coals, and crucible fires. So much is to be read. Our sulfur is in itself already gentle, for it suffers no harm at all from strong fire. But our argentum vivum will by no means endure heat, still less violent fire, nor does it tolerate it. It vanishes in short order if one only applies it in water. In sum, I have said it above as well, avoid the material fire. An apple or a ripe pear have within themselves their seed and kernel. When the kernel is placed in the earth, then post-putrefactionem after putrefaction a little shoot springs up, which in its time and according to its kind becomes a tree that bears fruit of the same kind as the seed of the tree was and whence it came. But if the apple or pear be first cooked, roasted, dried, and its life-giving spirit corrupted and burnt away, then such cooked or dried kernels, place them where you will never again bring forth a shoot. Thus it is also with our argentum vivum and with all elaborations. When now the kernel has first brought forth a shoot, then the shoot ever grows until it is great, then the tree blossoms and bears fruit. Does nature use for this any coal fire, or anything other than the sun? Do open your eyes and consider all natural motions and transformations. You will find that each thing, by its own and after its own kind, helps itself forward and grows. Nature helps each created thing along, but man must also put his hand to it, and sow all kinds of seed in his prepared field. So it goes also with our work. The artist should only purify, bring his salt into his prepared earth, moisten it often, and dry it, let God and nature govern and rule. Nature furthers our work, but man must also put hand to it. And when he has rightly united his principles, and they have been dried, then he must give them their own milk to drink until his earth has become sweet. I will also, in conclusion, make a brief recapitulation. The soul of man is damned for the sake of the sin which flesh and blood have committed. Our philosophical primum ens metallorum first being of the metals also brings forth no good, if its argentum vivum is not purely added to it. For all strange, useless salia salts and corrosiva corrosives corrupt and destroy the good. Man knows that God has artfully furnished his body with members, over which he must also marvel, especially if he only considers his will, whereby the object is immediately at hand, in a moment, to think and to do what he will. For then all the members must move at once. Does this will depend solely upon man? I say, no. The reason is, God, as his image, has imparted to man above all other creatures this blessing. Nature cannot give this, or such a will, to men. I have already said, the body, as the only subjectum subject, strives particularly for the sake of its soul, as indeed it should. But it is to be lamented that the body often masters the soul, so that it must consent unto sin. The body is by no means as worthy as the soul, and yet the soul must, on account of the sins committed by the body, give account. This, however, is not the will of nature nor of her contribution, for nature has nothing to do with the will of the body, but it is the corrupted will of man. Flesh and blood are the cause when the soul must suffer. So also here, in our philosophical work, nature provides the materials, but if the artist does not mix them together cleansed of all dross, uncorrupted and undefiled, then he can by no means bring forth the quintum ens fifth essence, but will rather prepare a monstrosity. Nature knows well how to make the philosophical mixture, of the warm and the cold, of the moist and the dry, and of all contrary qualities as agens and patiens active and passive, so that the one must willingly receive the other and unite with it. Then nature changes the first form, so that it may take on a new and better one, and may be augmented. The form then becomes the objectum object according to the power and potentia potential into the subjectum subject, which maintains the substance in constant operation, that before had stood only in potential. I have said that our elixir takes its beginning from the four elements, inasmuch as one element works into another, and nature then must make sulfur and argentum vivum living silver, quicksilver. All human wit and understanding cannot accomplish this, for who knows how the earthly quality disposes its being by the air, with its contraries of cold and moist, so that the moist may be transformed into a dry, and the dry again into a moist, and thereby formed and figured? The warmth will not depart from the cold and moist element, but because warmth knows how to reconcile and to perfect all contraries, indeed all composita compounds, and helps each thing forward, so must also, when the seed is good, a good form arise. The natural fire is also most necessary to all things, because this alone, and nothing else, can move. The air would not act if the fire did not enable it to do so. Fire is also the sole cause that all things must enter into putrefaction. Thereafter nature separates the pure from the impure, that she may make certain species and form as species and forms. If one considers everything carefully, one will find that nature must make for each thing a particular mixture of the elements, one matter for metals, another for vegetabilia plants, altogether different for animalia animals. For each working thing takes its effect only in the disposed passive thing. Therefore nature alone must change the first form, so that warm, cold, dry, and moist may each contain within themselves the contrary qualities, otherwise no forms could come forth from them. I repeat my words and say once more, our work is made from a single matter united with itself, in one furnace and vessel. From the four elements nature has made the beginning, with this the work is begun and completed. To this nothing else need be added, except a gentle external fire, otherwise the matter has everything in and with itself. I will therefore briefly repeat the entire process. Whoever will pay attention to it, for him it will not be regrettable to have followed my advice. When both sulfur ac argentum vivum sulfur and living silver/quicksilver have been purified to the highest degree, then take 12 parts of sulfur, and 1 part of salt, also called flowing water. Put the sulfur into a dissolving dish, and pour 1 part of oleum salus oil of salt or spiritus mercurii spirit of mercury upon it. Let it stand until it has dried, but protect it from dust. When it is dried, again pour 1 part of spiritus mercurii upon it, and let it dry once more. Then place the composition, our mercurius duplex double mercury, into a vial, and fill it at most to 1/3. Then take half a part of spiritus mercurii, and divide this half part into 7 equal portions. Pour each time 1/7 of this half part onto it, close and seal the vial very well, it must have a ground-glass stopper, taking care that the spirits cannot exhale. Place it in the same furnace of nature, and let it roast well in the sun. When you see that your matter dries and clings to the walls, but in the middle a dry island appears, then open the vial and give your child again 1/7 part of the former milk. Repeat this so often, with drying, pouring on, and well sealing, until the 7 imbibitions have been completed. Then test whether your tincture powder, when placed upon glowing silver or other metal, melts like wax and penetrates into the metal without smoke, as oil into leather. If so, it is right and good. If not, then you must take another half part of spiritus mercurii, divide it into 7 equal parts, and apply them one after another, always when your tincture powder has dried. It will reward your effort well. When your powder enters without smoke, and gives forth a good sign of itself, then take 3 parts of laminated gold or silver, and cast 1 part of your tincture powder into it. Let it flow for 3 days and nights in a sealed crucible in the fire, so after those 3 days your tincture powder will not only have extracted the anima soul from the solar or lunar body and drawn it into itself, but also united with the whole body of Sol et Luna, the sun and the moon, so that one cannot be separated from the other. With this one projects onto imperfect metals, such as lead, tin, copper, mercury, and the like. Yet it is very good, before that, to cleanse the imperfect metals somewhat of their dross in the melt, by casting in wagon grease, pine resin, or pitch. If the tincture had not received the body of gold or silver, then, because of its spirituality, it could by no means transmute. Coram fermentation. Before the fermentation, our tincture powder, 1 grain applied in good wine, is a universal medicine in all kinds of illnesses. More will the reader find in other books. May God grant to everyone who is worthy, grace, blessing, light, and understanding. I, however, according to the duty of my station, am willing to serve every man, unless God should direct my mind otherwise. Seek first the kingdom of God, and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Cursed be he who trusts in man, every man is a liar, but God alone is true. Amen. The End.